The ceremony hall fell silent as Seraphine lowered herself to her knees. For 3 years, she had stood beside the Alpha King as his betrothed. For 3 years, she had loved him in secret, never daring to speak the words aloud. And now, dressed in the gray garments of the displaced, she was about to watch another woman take her place. "You understand what you're doing?" her stepmother had asked that morning, false sympathy dripping from every syllable. "Once you bow, once you step aside, there's no returning. You'll be nothing." Seraphine understood perfectly. She was saving them all. A barren woman with cursed blood had no business standing beside a king. Her womb would bear no heirs. Her bloodline would poison any child unfortunate enough to take root. Stepping aside wasn't surrender. It was mercy. So when the ceremonial drums began and Rowena glided down the aisle in white and gold, Seraphine did exactly as tradition demanded. She bowed. She stepped to the side. She prepared to watch the only man she'd ever loved bind himself to her stepsister. But the Alpha King was not watching Rowena. His eyes, gray as storm clouds and just as turbulent, were fixed on Seraphine. On her bowed head, on her trembling hands. On the way, she refused to meet his gaze. And when the high priest raised his staff to begin the bonding rites, when Rowena reached for Kaelin's hand with a triumphant smile, the Alpha King did something no one expected. He stopped the ceremony. "No," he said, his voice cutting through the sacred hall like a blade through silk. "Not her." The kingdom would talk about what happened next for generations. How their king, their cold and dying king, had walked past his chosen bride without a glance. How he had descended the altar steps with purpose that made the crowd shrink back. How he had stopped directly before the kneeling woman in gray, the one everyone had already forgotten, and spoken words that shattered everything. "Rise, Seraphine. I will not bind myself to anyone but you." She should have felt joy. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt terror. Because he didn't know what she was. He didn't know what marrying her would cost him. And by the time he discovered the truth, it would be far too late. The morning of her displacement began like any other. Seraphine woke before dawn, as she always did, her body still trained to the routines of a future Luna. She bathed in cold water to sharpen her senses and dressed in simple linen, saving the finer fabrics for those who deserved them. She braided her dark hair away from her face, the way her mother had taught her before the sickness claimed her. Mother would be ashamed, she thought, catching her reflection in the small mirror above her wash basin. She raised me to be strong. She raised me to fight. But some battles couldn't be won. Some truths couldn't be outrun. The knock at her door came precisely at sunrise. Seraphine opened it to find her stepmother, Iselda, flanked by 2 servants carrying a gray gown. "The ceremonial garments," Iselda said smoothly. "You'll wear these today?" Gray, the color of the displaced, the color of those who willingly surrendered their claim to a mate. Seraphine had seen it worn only twice in her life, both times by women too old or too broken to fulfill their bonded duties. Never by someone her age, never by someone who had once been promised to a king. "Of course," Seraphine said quietly, taking the gown. The fabric was coarse against her fingers, deliberately uncomfortable. Iselda studied her with calculating eyes, green like shallow water, revealing nothing of the depths beneath. "You're doing the right thing, child. You know that, don't you?" Child. Seraphine was 23 years old, but Iselda had called her that since the day she'd married Seraphine's father. A constant reminder of her place. "I know," Seraphine said. "The kingdom needs heirs. The Alpha King needs a Luna who can provide them." Iselda's voice softened into something almost resembling kindness. "You can't give him that. Your blood is compromised. We've discussed this." They had discussed it endlessly. For 3 years, Iselda had reminded her of the curse that ran through her mother's bloodline. For 3 years, she had produced healers and historians who confirmed what Seraphine already knew. Children born of her body would be twisted, wrong, and dangerous. The bloodline had to end with her. And then there was the barrenness. The herbs Iselda gave her each morning for her health had done nothing to ease the hollow ache in her womb. The moon cycles came and went without change. She was empty, broken, useless. "Rowena will be a good Luna," Seraphine said because it was expected. Something flickered in Iselda's expression. Satisfaction, triumph barely concealed. "She will. She'll give the king strong sons and bring honor to our family." A pause, weighted with meaning. "To my family." The correction landed like a slap. Seraphine absorbed it silently, the way she'd learned to absorb everything. "I'll dress now," she said. Iselda smiled. "The ceremony begins at midday. Don't be late." "And Seraphine?" She paused at the threshold. "Remember to bow deeply. Show the kingdom you accept this willingly. We wouldn't want anyone to think you were reluctant." The door closed, and Seraphine stood alone with the gray dress pooling in her hands like ash. 3 years, she thought. 3 years of standing beside him. 3 years of learning his moods, his silences, his rare and precious smiles. 3 years of falling in love with a man I was never meant to keep. She had never told Kaelin how she felt. Their betrothal had been political. Her father's territory allied with the crown, her hand offered as a seal on the treaty. Love was never part of the arrangement. He treated her with distant courtesy, nothing more. A nod when they passed in corridors, a brief word at formal dinners. His attention always elsewhere, his mind consumed by matters of state. He probably didn't even know her favorite flower, her mother's name, the sound of her laugh. "He won't miss me," Seraphine told herself as she pulled the gray dress over her head. "He never even saw me." But her wolf, the creature that lived beneath her skin, sharing her heartbeat, let out a low, mournful howl that echoed through her bones. "Mate," her wolf whispered, "he is ours. He has always been ours." "He was never ours," Seraphine said aloud, as if speaking the words could make them true. "And after today, he never will be." The great hall of Valdrin had been transformed. Seraphine barely recognized it. Where there had once been simple grandeur, stone walls, iron chandeliers, the banner of the royal house, there was now an explosion of white and gold. Flowers cascaded from every surface. Ribbons wound around pillars like serpents made of silk. The scent of jasmine and honey hung thick in the air, cloying and sweet. Rowena's taste, Seraphine realized. Her stepsister had always loved excess. The hall was already filling with nobility when Seraphine arrived. She entered through a side door. Displaced mates did not use the main entrance, and found her designated position near the back of the assembly. A small square of floor had been marked for her in chalk. She was expected to stand there throughout the ceremony, visible enough to witness her own replacement, invisible enough to be forgotten immediately after. "Sarah." The voice came from her left. Seraphine turned to find Lord Theron Vask approaching, his weathered face creased with concern. He had been her father's closest friend before Iselda's arrival changed everything. He was one of the few people in the castle who still used her childhood name. "Lord Vask," she said softly. "You don't have to do this." He kept his voice low, aware of the ears around them. "There are other ways. You could petition the council. Challenge the displacement on grounds of—" "On what grounds?" Seraphine interrupted gently. "I'm barren. My bloodline carries a curse. The Alpha King needs heirs, and I cannot provide them." Theron's jaw tightened. "Those are your stepmother's claims. Have you sought verification from anyone outside her circle of healers?" The question struck something inside Seraphine, a small buried ember of doubt that she had smothered countless times. "It doesn't matter," she said. "The ceremony is today. In less than an hour, Rowena will be Luna and I will be—" "Nothing," Theron finished bitterly. "They'll make you nothing, child. Is that truly what you want?" Seraphine met his eyes. "What I want has never mattered, Lord Vask. You know that as well as anyone." Before he could respond, the ceremonial drums began. The sound rolled through the great hall like thunder, silencing every conversation. The crowd parted, creating a clear path from the main entrance to the altar where the high priest waited. And there, at the far end of the hall, framed by the towering oak doors, stood Rowena. She was radiant, golden hair cascading over bare shoulders, a gown of white silk and cloth of gold that probably cost more than most families earned in a lifetime. Diamonds glittering at her throat, her wrists, her ears. She looked like a goddess descended from the heavens. And beside her, his arm extended for her to take, stood Seraphine's father. Lord Aldrich Crane had aged in the years since her mother's death. His dark hair had gone silver, his shoulders had stooped. But his eyes, when they swept the crowd and landed briefly on Seraphine, held no warmth at all. Only resignation, only distance. He looked away without acknowledgement and began walking Rowena down the aisle. The crowd murmured in appreciation. Seraphine heard fragments of conversation floating past her. Absolutely stunning, isn't she? Proper Luna, finally. About time he put aside that other one, the cursed girl. The cursed girl? Is that what they called her? Seraphine supposed it was better than some alternatives. The procession reached the altar. Rowena released Aldrich's arm and ascended the steps alone, her movements practiced and graceful. The high priest, an ancient wolf with a white beard that reached his navel, raised his staff to command attention. "People of Valdrin," he intoned, his voice carrying through the hall with supernatural clarity, "we gather today to witness a sacred bond, a binding of souls, a union that will strengthen our kingdom and secure our future." Seraphine felt the pressure of tradition bearing down on her. This was the moment. The moment when the displaced mate was required to formally surrender her claim. She stepped forward from her chalk square, aware of every eye suddenly turning toward her. Her feet carried her to the center of the aisle, directly between the altar and the watching crowd. The weight of their attention pressed against her skin like physical force. "Before the binding may proceed," the high priest continued, "tradition demands acknowledgement from the one who steps aside. Seraphine Crane, former betrothed of Alpha King Kalen of Valdrin, do you willingly surrender your claim?" Her wolf howled inside her, a sound of pure anguish. "Don't," the creature begged. "Please. He is ours. The bond is there. I can feel it, buried beneath something dark, something wrong, but it's there." "I do," Seraphine said clearly. "Do you acknowledge your inability to fulfill the duties of Luna, releasing your betrothed from all obligation?" "No. No. No. I do." "Then kneel, Seraphine Crane, and bow before your successor." Seraphine lowered herself to the cold stone floor, her knees hit hard, the impact jarring through her bones. She bent forward, pressing her forehead nearly to the ground. "This is right," she told herself. "This is mercy. This is—" "Rise." The voice didn't belong to the high priest. Seraphine's head snapped up. Standing at the top of the altar steps, having somehow appeared without her noticing, was Kalen, the Alpha King, her former betrothed, the only man she had ever loved. He was dressed in ceremonial black, the color of kings during binding rites. His dark hair was pulled back from a face that artists had tried and failed to capture, too severe, too striking, and too alive with intensity that no painting could hold. His eyes were fixed on her with an expression she couldn't read. But something was wrong. His skin, usually bronzed from hours of outdoor training, had a grayish pallor. His cheekbones seemed sharper than she remembered, as if he'd lost weight he couldn't afford to lose. And when he stepped forward, descending the first step toward her, she saw him waver. Just slightly, just for an instant, as if his legs weren't entirely trustworthy. "Your Majesty," the high priest said, confusion evident in his voice. "The ceremony requires her acknowledgement before—" "She's acknowledged enough." Kalen descended another step, his gaze never left Seraphine's face. "I've watched her kneel. I've heard her words. And now I'm telling you, telling all of you, that I reject them." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Reject? Rowena's voice came out high and thin. You can't reject a willing displacement. The law clearly states— The law states, Kaelin interrupted, that an Alpha King may claim any mate of his choosing. That supersedes displacement protocols. He reached the bottom of the steps. I'm invoking that right. Now. Seraphine couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare up at him as he crossed the distance between them and stopped directly before her kneeling form. Up close, she could see how truly unwell he looked. His skin was cold. She could feel it radiating from him even without contact. His breathing was shallow, and his eyes held something desperate beneath the iron control, something almost afraid. Rise, Seraphine, he said again, softer this time. Softer, but no less commanding. Your Majesty, I can't— she started. You can. He extended his hand to her. His fingers trembled. Barely perceptible, but she noticed. You will. I will not bind myself to anyone but you. The hall erupted. She heard Rowena screaming something, heard Iselda's sharp voice cutting through the chaos, heard her father calling for order that no one heeded. But all of it seemed distant, muffled, unimportant compared to the man standing before her with his hand outstretched. You don't know what I am, Seraphine whispered. I know exactly what you are, Kaelin said. Mine. Her wolf surged forward with a cry of recognition, and despite everything, despite the lies she believed, despite all the reasons this was wrong, Seraphine placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, and the world shifted. The private council chamber erupted with fury. Iselda stood by the window, her composure cracked for the first time in Seraphine's memory. Rowena was sobbing into a handkerchief that was more decorative than functional. Lord Aldrich hovered uncertainly between his wife and his daughter, and the council members sat around the table with expressions ranging from outrage to bewilderment. Kaelin sat at the head of the table. Seraphine had been placed in the chair to his immediate right, the Luna's chair, though she hadn't been formally installed, and she felt the wrongness of it in every fiber of her being. This is madness, Iselda said, her voice carefully modulated despite the anger burning in her eyes. Your Majesty, you cannot simply override a displacement conducted according to law. I believe I just did, Kaelin said. The girl is barren, cursed. She cannot provide you with heirs. And yet I've chosen her. Iselda's hands clenched at her sides. The kingdom requires succession. The council requires— The council, Kaelin interrupted, his voice soft but edged with warning, advises. It does not command. Or has something changed since I took the throne? Silence fell over the room. Seraphine watched the exchange with growing unease. She had never seen Kaelin engage so directly with opposition. In the 3 years of their betrothal, he had always seemed removed, present, but not fully engaged, as if some essential part of him was elsewhere. Now, though diminished physically, he radiated an intensity that made even the oldest council members look away. Your Majesty, Lord Vareth, the eldest counselor, spoke carefully. Lady Iselda raises legitimate concerns. The bloodline is none of your concern? Forgive me, but the royal succession is precisely our concern. If Lady Seraphine cannot bear children, then I will die without an heir. Kaelin's tone didn't change. That was always a possibility. I've made my peace with it. Something flickered across his face. Pain, quickly suppressed, and Seraphine saw his hand move beneath the table, pressing against his chest. The gesture lasted only a moment, but she noticed. She noticed everything about him. He's ill, she realized with sudden clarity. Not just pale, not just tired. Actually ill. And he's hiding it. The wedding will proceed in 3 days, Kaelin announced, rising from his chair. He moved carefully, as if conserving energy. Seraphine will be examined by healers of my choosing, not yours, Lady Iselda, and we will discover the truth of these claims once and for all. And if the truth is what we've always said? Iselda asked, defiance returning to her voice. Kaelin paused at the door. Then I will marry her anyway, he said, and you will bow to your new queen or leave my kingdom. The choice is yours. He left. The chamber erupted into chaos, but Seraphine barely heard it. She was already on her feet, following him. She found him leaning against the wall just around the corner, one hand braced against the stone, his breathing labored. Your Majesty. Not here, he said through gritted teeth. My chambers. Now. He pushed off the wall and began walking, or trying to. After 3 steps, his leg buckled. Seraphine moved without thinking, sliding under his arm to support his weight. He was heavier than she'd expected, solid muscle despite his gaunt appearance. And cold. So cold that her skin prickled where they touched. Don't, he started. If you fall in this corridor, everyone will know something's wrong, Seraphine said quietly. Let me help you. He stared at her for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, at being challenged. Then he nodded once and let her take some of his weight. They moved slowly through the castle, using servant passages that Seraphine knew from her years as unofficial Luna in training. By the time they reached the royal chambers, Kaelin was barely conscious. She helped him to a chair by the fire, though the fire was barely embers, the room uncomfortably cold. He collapsed into the seat with a sound of relief that bordered on a groan. Thank you, he said roughly. Seraphine didn't respond. She was already moving around the room, adding logs to the fire, stirring the embers until flames caught and began throwing warmth into the space. She found extra furs in a chest by the bed and draped them over his shoulders without asking permission. When she finally stepped back, Kaelin was watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. You've done this before, he said, cared for someone who couldn't care for themselves. My mother. The words came out before she could stop them. Before she died, she was cold at the end too. Always cold, no matter how many blankets I piled on her. Something flickered in his gray eyes. How did she die? A wasting sickness. The healers couldn't identify it. Seraphine paused, the old grief stirring in her chest. She just faded. A little more each day, until there was nothing left to fade. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken recognition. That's what's happening to you, Seraphine said. It wasn't a question. Isn't it? Kaelin's jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he would deny it, or dismiss her, send her away, retreat behind the wall of cold courtesy he'd maintained for 3 years. Instead he said, yes. One word. An admission that changed everything. For how long? It began the night of our betrothal. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Poetic, isn't it? The moment I should have been celebrating my future, I started dying. 3 years. He had been dying for 3 years, hiding it from everyone. Does anyone know? My personal healer. My wolf. He paused. And now you. The trust implicit in those words settled over Seraphine like a physical weight. Why are you telling me this? She asked. You've barely spoken to me in 3 years, and now you stop my displacement, insist on marrying me, reveal your deepest secret? Why? Kaelin's eyes met hers, and for the first time she saw through the mask he wore. Beneath the king, beneath the cold control, there was desperation. There was fear. And there was something else. Something that made her wolf keen with recognition. Because you're the only thing that makes the cold bearable, he said quietly. When you're near me, the ice in my chest recedes. When you're far away, it spreads. And today, watching you kneel in that hall, watching you prepare to walk out of my life forever, the pain was unbearable, as if something inside me was being torn apart. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Your wolf, she repeated slowly. What does your wolf say about me? Kaelin's eyes flashed gold for an instant, the color of his beast rising to the surface. He says you're ours, he admitted. He's been saying it since the night we met. But something is blocking the bond, clouding it. I can feel you there, but I can't reach you. It's like grasping smoke. The mate bond. He was describing a mate bond, corrupted, blocked, but present. That's impossible, Seraphine whispered. I'm betrothed to you politically. There's no fated connection between us. Are you certain of that? Kalen leaned forward, his gaze piercing. Or is that simply what you've been told? The question struck her like a blow. She thought of Iselda's endless reminders that the betrothal was merely political. She thought of the herbs she took every morning for her health. She thought of the way her wolf had howled, mate, 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 when Kalen had touched her hand. What if everything she believed was a lie? I need to examine you, she heard herself say. My mother taught me things about bonds, about what can corrupt them. She placed her hand on his chest, directly over his heart, and closed her eyes. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. Feel for the threads, little one. Every wolf carries them. Gold for strength, silver for wisdom, red for the bond that ties soul to soul. Seraphine reached inward, calling on instincts she hadn't used since childhood. And there, beneath her palm, she felt it. A bond, a mate bond, thick as rope and golden red with potential, but wrapped in something dark. Something oily and wrong that squeezed it tight, choking it the way vines might strangle a tree. There's a curse on you, she breathed. Someone has cursed your mate bond. Kalen's hand closed over hers. Can you remove it? I don't know, but there's more. The herbs Iselda gave me every day for 3 years. What if they were suppressing my bond too? Stop taking them, Kalen said immediately. Starting now. If I do, and the curse on my bloodline is real, then we'll face it together. His eyes held hers, fierce and unwavering. No more lies, no more hiding. Whatever we are, we discover it together. Agreed? Her wolf surged forward with a cry of joy. Agreed, Seraphine whispered, and when his cold fingers intertwined with hers, she felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. 3 days passed in a blur of examinations, preparations, and whispered arguments that Seraphine pretended not to hear. Kalen's healers, 3 women brought from distant territories, owing nothing to Iselda's influence, poked and prodded and questioned her for hours. They drew blood. They examined her womb through methods both mundane and magical. They asked about her monthly cycles, her mother's health, and her grandmother's history. On the morning of the 3rd day, they delivered their verdict. There is nothing wrong with you, the eldest healer announced, her weathered face creased with confusion. Your womb is healthy. Your bloodline shows no signs of curse or corruption. You are, by every measure we can apply, perfectly capable of bearing children. Seraphine sat frozen on the examination table. That can't be right, she heard herself say. The other healers, the ones my stepmother brought, they confirm the curse. They confirm my barrenness. The healer's expression darkened. Then they lied. Or they were paid to lie. Lied. The word echoed through Seraphine's mind, rearranging everything she had believed about herself. There's one more thing, the healer continued, her voice gentler now. You've been ingesting something. A compound designed to suppress the reproductive cycle and dull the mate bond, making it nearly impossible to recognize or feel. The herbs, Iselda's herbs, all of it was lies. I was never barren, I was never cursed. They poisoned me for 3 years, dulled my bond, made me believe I was worthless. And I never questioned it. Her mother's old chambers had been sealed since her death 8 years ago. Using secret passages she'd learned as unofficial Luna in training, Seraphine dropped through the ceiling into the dusty room. Everything was exactly as she remembered. The bed with its faded blue coverlet. The bookshelf stuffed with volumes on herbalism and other things. Blood magic and its bindings. The art of severance. Curses. Creation and dissolution. A loose page fluttered from between the volumes, her mother's handwriting. If you're reading this, my darling, then I am gone and they have kept you from this room for years. I am sorry. I should have told you everything while I had the chance. You are not cursed, Seraphine. Your bloodline is not poison. These are lies that will be told to you by people who fear what you might become. The truth: you carry the gift of unbinding. It passes through the women of our line, mother to daughter, and it is the rarest magic in the realm. You can see bonds, mate bonds, magical bonds, curses that tie soul to soul, and you can untangle them. You can break what should be unbreakable. This gift made our ancestors powerful. It also made them targets. I hid my gift. I hid yours. But someone knows what you are. Someone is already moving against you. If I die before you come of age, find my sister Asila in Briar's End, beyond the Thornwood. She will teach you what I cannot. You are not broken. You are one of the most powerful beings in the realm, and when you learn to use your gift, no one will ever be able to cage you again. An unbinder. The gift she'd used instinctively to see Kaylin's curse was her birthright, and her mother had been murdered for it. In a locked drawer, Seraphine found 2 more items: a vial labeled antidote for the slow death, 1 drop each night for 7 nights, and a name on parchment. The witch who sold the curse is Morrigan Black. She lives in the capital. Her mother had known, had prepared an antidote and left it here, hoping Seraphine would find it in time to save Kaylin. She ran for his chambers, finding him collapsed on the floor. 1 drop of antidote on his tongue, and color flooded back into his cheeks. She told him everything: the unbinders, the herbs, the witch who'd sold the curse. When she finished, Kaylin said, "We marry tomorrow. If Iselda learns you've discovered the truth, she'll try to silence you. Our only protection is to complete the bond, fully, officially. Tomorrow, you become my Luna, and then we hunt down everyone who tried to destroy us." "Tomorrow," Seraphine agreed. The ceremony was held in the small chapel adjacent to the royal quarters, private, witnessed only by Lord Vask, the 3 healers, and an elderly high priestess from the mountain temple who owed nothing to court politics. Seraphine walked down the aisle in her mother's wedding gown, found preserved in a trunk. Simple white silk, clean lines, the kind of gown a woman wore when she wanted to be seen for herself. Lord Vask had asked to walk her down the aisle. "Your mother would have wanted someone who loved you to stand beside you today," he'd said, tears in his eyes. "Your father has forfeited that right." At the altar, Kaylin looked better. Not healed. 1 dose couldn't undo 3 years. But better. When he saw her in her mother's gown, something raw and wondering shifted in his expression. "You're beautiful," he said quietly. "You're alive," she replied. "That's all I care about." The high priestess began the old rites. Not political alliance, not contract, true binding sealed in blood. "Kaylin of the House of Valdrin, do you recognize this woman as your mate?" "I do." "And do you offer her your bond freely, knowing that once given, it can never be reclaimed?" "I offer it freely. More freely than I've ever offered anything in my life." When the same questions came to Seraphine, she answered with equal certainty. "Then let the bond be sealed." Kaylin tilted her head to expose her neck. His lips brushed her pulse. Then his teeth descended, piercing her skin. Pain transformed immediately into something electric, arcing through her entire body. The bond snapped into place. She felt his relief, his wonder, and his overwhelming gratitude. She felt the cold still lurking in his chest, the curse fighting the antidote. She felt his wolf wrapping around her consciousness. Finally, she heard him think through their new connection. After 3 years of reaching and never touching, finally. She marked him in return, tasting something golden and vast beneath the curse's corruption. "It is done," the high priestess declared. "What the gods have bound, let no mortal sever." The royal chambers had been transformed. When Seraphine had last been here, helping Kaylin to a chair after his collapse, the room had been cold and sparse, the fire dying. Now, warmth poured from a roaring hearth. Thick furs covered the bed. Candles burned on every surface, filling the air with the scent of honey and cedar. "My servants were enthusiastic. Kaelin said from behind her. I may have mentioned that my new bride deserved better than a tomb. Seraphine turned to face him. He had removed his formal jacket, leaving only the white shirt beneath, unlaced at the throat. In the candlelight, he looked almost healthy. Almost like a man who hadn't been dying for 3 years. How do you feel? She asked. Better than I have since the night we met. He stepped closer, reaching up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. I can feel the curse still, a weight in my chest, but it's manageable now. He took her hand, leading her deeper into the room. Through the bond, she felt his nervousness, carefully controlled, hidden beneath layers of confidence, but present. The Alpha King, nervous about his wedding night. The realization made her heart ache with tenderness. We don't have to, she began. I want to. He turned to face her, his hand settling on her waist. I've wanted you since the first moment I saw you. Before I understood what you were to me, before I knew that touching you was the only thing that kept the cold at bay. I thought you barely noticed me, she admitted. For 3 years, you looked through me like I was invisible. Pain flickered through the bond. The curse clouded everything. I could feel that you were important, that you were mine, but every time I tried to focus on you, it was like grasping water. And now? His grip tightened on her waist. Now I can see you clearly. Every detail. His eyes traced her face with hungry attention. And I want to learn them all. Starting tonight. Then stop talking, she whispered, and show me. He kissed her, consuming, demanding, 3 years of suppressed longing finally given release. His mouth moved against hers, coaxing her lips apart, and his tongue sweeping against hers in strokes that made her knees weaken. Through the bond, she experienced his pleasure as her own, the relief of finally touching her freely, the intoxication of her scent filling his lungs, the primal satisfaction of his wolf at having its mate so close. Kaelin was gentle, patient, asking permission at every step. When she admitted she'd never done this before, he cupped her face in his palms. We go as slow as you need. This night is for you as much as me. The gentleness in his voice undid something in her chest. She kissed him again, slower this time, learning the shape of his mouth. His hands roamed her back, her sides, exploring, memorizing. Every touch sent sensation ricocheting through the bond, her pleasure and his merging until she couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. When they finally came together, they both cried out. The bond blazed between them, amplifying every sensation to near unbearable intensity. There, his wolf breathed through their connection. Home. Finally, home. They moved together, finding their rhythm in the candlelight. The curse retreated further, burned back by the heat they generated between them. The bond deepened, wove tighter, and became something unbreakable. And when release finally crashed over them both, simultaneous, overwhelming, perfect, Seraphine understood what her mother's letter had meant. She was powerful. She was whole. And with this man beside her, she was invincible. Afterward, they lay tangled in the furs, her head on his chest, his arm wrapped around her waist. Through the bond, she felt his contentment, a deep, settled peace that she suspected was unfamiliar to him. Stay, she murmured sleepily. I'm not going anywhere. He pressed a kiss to her hair. Not tonight. Not ever again. She fell asleep to the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear, warmer than it had been in 3 years. She woke to cold, true cold, biting and sharp. Kaelin sat on the bed's edge, hands pressed against his chest, terror flooding their connection. The curse, he said. It's not retreating, it's accelerating. Seraphine reached for her gift and looked. The curse had transformed from a strangling vine into a serpent, alive, malevolent, and feeding on their newly completed bond. Someone built in a failsafe, she breathed. If you ever truly bonded with your mate, it would kill you immediately. His heart faltered through their connection. The witch who made this curse, Morrigan Black, find her. Make her tell you how to break it. I won't leave you. You have to. He cupped her face with frozen hands. If you stay and watch me die, the curse wins. But if you find the cure and bring it back, what if I'm too late? Then you'll still have your power. And you'll still make them pay. She kissed him. Hard, desperate. Then ran for the stables. Seraphine rode like death was chasing her. Every mile she covered, she felt Kaelin weakening through their bond. The connection that had blazed so bright last night was dimming now, flickering like a candle in a storm. The capital city of Valdren sprawled before her as the sun crested its peak. Towering spires of gray stone, markets crowded with merchants, streets teeming with wolves and humans alike. Somewhere in this maze was a witch who had sold death to her stepmother. She found Morrigan Black in a hidden alley behind the Temple of the Moon, young, sharp-featured, with hair the color of dried blood and eyes like chips of obsidian. Her beauty was sharp and unsettling, the kind that made you want to look away even as it drew you closer. Seraphine Valdren, Morrigan said, I heard about the wedding. News travels fast when kings do unexpected things. You know who I am. I know many things, including why you're here. Your mate is dying and you want me to save him. Can you? Straight to business. I appreciate that. Morrigan settled into a chair by the fire, crossing her legs with deliberate elegance. Yes, I can save him. The curse that's killing him. I created it 8 years ago, commissioned by a woman who wanted to ensure the Alpha King would never have a true heir. Iselda. Very good. Morrigan smiled, showing teeth that were slightly too sharp. She came to me with gold and hatred and a plan that spanned decades. Curse the king's mate bond. Make him incapable of recognizing his true mate. If he ever did manage to bond properly, ensure the connection itself became the killing blow. Through her dimming link to Kaelin, Seraphine felt another pulse of cold. Time was running out. Why? She demanded. What did Iselda gain from this? Power, of course, the oldest motivation, her daughter on the throne, her bloodline securing the succession. And along the way, the elimination of the one obstacle that could have stopped her. My mother. Lyrian was an unbinder. Morrigan's eyes met Seraphine's, sharp with interest. She could have unraveled my curse in moments. She had to die before she discovered what Iselda had done. A pause. I didn't kill her, if that's what you're wondering. I simply sold the tool. Iselda wielded it herself. Rage burned through Seraphine. And you felt no guilt? Guilt is expensive, I can't afford it. Morrigan leaned forward. But you can afford something else. Something I want. Name it. Your gift. The unbinding. You can see curses, unravel them, and break what should be unbreakable. I want you to teach me how. Seraphine stared at her. That's your price? Knowledge? Is that so surprising? Power comes in many forms. Gold is temporary. Knowledge is forever. Morrigan produced a vial from her sleeve, crystalline liquid swirling with light. This is the cure. Teach me the foundations of unbinding, and I'll give you this, plus documents proving Iselda commissioned the curse, signed contracts, payment records, everything. Teaching a dark witch felt dangerous, possibly catastrophic, but Kaelin was dying. Every moment she delayed was a moment closer to losing him forever. Swear it, she said. Swear on your magic that you'll give me the cure and the evidence the moment I've taught you. Morrigan extended her hand, dark light gathering in her fingers. I swear on my gift, my blood, and the source of my power that I will honor this bargain. The oath settled between them, binding and unbreakable. Sit, Seraphine commanded. Close your eyes and listen carefully. She taught. Foundations, principles, how to see the threads of magic that bound people together. Her mother's teachings, absorbed in childhood and dormant for years, rising to the surface when she needed them most. 43 minutes later, Seraphine stopped. That's the foundation, she said. Everything else builds from there. Morrigan opened her eyes, gleaming with new understanding. Remarkable. Your mother was a fool to hide this. I didn't teach you so you could make more weapons. No. Morrigan pressed the vial into Seraphine's hands and handed her a leather folder thick with documents. You taught me so you could save your mate, which you should do now before it's too late. She felt the moment his heart stopped. The bond went silent, a terrible absence where warmth had been. She burst into his chambers. Healers surrounded the bed. Kaelin lay utterly still. Move! She climbed onto the bed, pouring the cure between his cold lips. Then she placed both hands on his chest and called on her gift with everything she had. The curse was everywhere, a serpent of darkness wrapped around his heart. The bond lay shattered beside it. But beneath the destruction, something still pulsed. His wolf. Come back, she commanded. Follow my voice. Follow the bond. The bond is broken. Then we build a new one. Together. Fight with me. She reached for the shattered threads, gathering them with hands made of pure will. The cure spread through his veins, and reaching deep into her gift, she began to unravel the curse. It fought her. But she had something it couldn't comprehend. Love. She wove it into her attack, letting devotion flow through every thread she touched. The serpent unraveled. The darkness retreated. Kaelin's heart began to beat again. He gasped, eyes opening. You came back. I told you I would. I love you, he said, rough with wonder. I don't know when it happened, but I love you. She kissed him. The curse was broken. Her mate was saved. Now it was time for vengeance. 3 days later, Kaelin addressed the court. Seraphine stood beside him in crimson, the color of blood and justice. In the center of the hall, 3 figures waited in chains: Iselda, Rowena, and Lord Aldrich. 3 years ago, Kaelin announced, the night of my betrothal to Seraphine, a curse was placed upon me, designed to prevent me from bonding with my true mate, intended to kill me slowly. That curse was commissioned by Lady Iselda Crane, who had it created 8 years prior when she murdered Seraphine's mother. Lies! Iselda screamed. Seraphine descended from the throne, leather folder in hand. You had your time for words, years of them. She read aloud. Contracts with Morrigan Black, payment records, letters in Iselda's hand discussing the timeline, recipes for the herbs laced into Seraphine's tonics. And finally, a letter to Iselda's sister. The plan proceeds perfectly. Lyrian is finally dead. The girl is broken, believing herself cursed. The king weakens daily. Soon, Rowena will be Luna, and no one will ever know how we achieved it. The hall erupted. My mother was an unbinder, Seraphine announced, silencing the chaos. Iselda had her killed because she feared what my mother might discover. But the gift is hereditary, and I am my mother's daughter. She turned to her father. Did you know? Aldrich's voice was hoarse. Not all of it. But I knew something was wrong. I was a coward. Believing her was easier than facing the truth. You are guilty of cowardice, of failing to protect your wife and daughter. But you did not commission the curse. Your punishment will be decided by the council. She turned to Rowena. Did you know? No. She told me you were stepping aside willingly. You knew she hated me. You benefited and never questioned why. That is not a crime the law can punish, but you will carry it. Finally, she faced Iselda. You are guilty of murder, conspiracy, and high treason. The punishment is death. Kaelin rose. Let it be known that this court does not tolerate treachery, and let it also be known, his voice gentled, that I love my wife. She saved my life. Any who threaten her will answer to me personally. The crowd erupted in cheers, and Seraphine, for the first time in her life, felt truly seen. Iselda's execution took place at dawn. Neither Seraphine nor Kaelin attended. Rowena was banished. Aldrich was stripped of his title and lands. Seraphine's aunt Isila arrived from Briar's End, fierce, wild-haired and weeping at the sight of her sister's daughter. "You look just like Lyrian," she said. "I've waited so long to meet you." Asila stayed for months, teaching Seraphine everything about the unbinding gift, how to see all bonds, how to trace curses to their source, how to unravel them thread by thread. "You have more power than your mother did," Asila said, "but you have something most unbinders lack, a perfect bond of your own. That connection grounds you." 6 months after the trial, Seraphine discovered she was pregnant. She told Kaelin in the rose garden. He dropped to his knees, pressed his face to her stomach, and wept. "I never thought I would have this," he managed. "A mate, a child, a future." "Neither did I." She lifted his face. "But we have it now. All of it." 1 year later, the nursery was quiet in early morning light. Seraphine watched her daughter sleep. Lyrian, named for the grandmother she would never meet, had her father's dark hair and her mother's eyes. She was perfect. Impossible. A miracle. Arms wrapped around her from behind. "She has your stubbornness," Seraphine murmured. "Already?" "She refused to sleep until I sang the same lullaby 4 times. They stood together, watching their daughter breathe. "The council met this morning," Kaelin said. "The new laws protecting bonded wolves passed unanimously. The registry of curse breakers is established. Your aunt agreed to lead the training program." "We did it," Seraphine said quietly. "Everything we planned. We're not done. We'll never be done. But we'll do it together." She rose on her toes to kiss him. Together. Baby Lyrian stirred, letting out a small cry. Kaelin lifted her with exaggerated care. "Go rest," he said. "You were up half the night." Seraphine watched them, her mate and her daughter, the family she had never dared dream of, and felt her heart swell with love so vast it threatened to overwhelm her. 1 year ago, she had been a woman in gray, kneeling before her own displacement. Now she was Luna of Valdren, mother, wife, unbinder, reformer, and most importantly, she was loved, fully, freely, without condition or curse. She had stepped aside once, believing herself unworthy. She would never step aside again. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, let me know in the comments below. Your thoughts mean more than you know. And if you want to hear more stories like this one, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an upload. Until next time.